Edmund Ironside or Edmund II was King of England from April 23 to October 18, 1016 and of Wessex from April 23 to November 30, 1016. His cognomen Ironside is not recorded until 1057, but may have been contemporary. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, it was given to him, because of his valour in resisting the Danish invasion led by Cnut the Great. He fought 5 battles against the Danes, ending in defeat against Cnut on October 18 at the Battle of Assandun, after which they agreed to divide the kingdom, Edmund taking Wessex and Cnut the rest of the country. Edmund died shortly afterwards on November 30, and Cnut became the king of all England. Life: Edmund was a signatory to charters from 993. He was the third of the 6 sons of King Aethel the Unready and his first wife, Aelfgifu, who was probably the daughter of Earl Thord of Northumbria. His elder brothers were Aethelstan and Egbert, and younger ones, Edred, Edwig and Edgar. He had 4 sisters, Edith, Aelfgifu, Wulfilda, and the abbess of Wherwell Abbey. His mother died around 1000, after which his father remarried, this time to Emma of Normandy, who had 2 sons, Edward the Confessor and Alfred, and a daughter Goda. Aethelstan probably did not approve of the increasing influence of Ealdorman Edric-Striona from 1007, and he seems to have formed a friendship with Sigarth and Morcar, 2 of the leading thegns of the 5 boroughs of the East Midlands. Aethelstan and Edmund were close, and they probably felt threatened by Emma's ambitions for her sons. The Life of Edward the Confessor, written 50 years later, claimed that when Emma was pregnant with him, all Englishmen promised that if the child was a boy they would accept him as king. When Sweyn Forkbeard seized the throne at the end of 1013 and Aetheld fled to France, the brothers do not appear to have followed him, but stayed in England. Aethelstan died in June 1014 and left his brother estates and his sword which had belonged to King Offa of Mercia. His will also reflected the close relationship between the brothers and the nobility of the East Midlands. Sweyn died in February 1014, and the 5 boroughs accepted his son Cnut, who married a kinswoman of Sigarth and Morcar, as king. However, Aetheld returned to England and launched a surprise attack which defeated the Vikings and forced Cnut to flee England. In 1015 Sigarth and Morcar came to an assembly in Oxford, probably hoping for a royal pardon, but they were murdered by Edric-Striona. King Aetheld then ordered that Sigarth's widow, Ealdgyth, be seized and brought to Malmesbury Abbey, but Edmund seized and married her in defiance of his father, probably to consolidate his power base in the East Midlands. He then received the submission of the people of the 5 boroughs. At the same time, Cnut launched a new invasion of England. In late 1015 Edmund raised an army, possibly assisted by his wife's and mother's links with the Midlands and the North, but the Mercians under Edric-Striona joined the West Saxons in submitting to Cnut. In early 1016 the army assembled by Edmund dispersed when Aethel did not appear to lead it, probably due to illness. Edmund then raised a new army and in conjunction with early Uhtred of Northumbria ravaged Edric-Striona's Mercian territories, but when Cnut occupied Northumbria Uhtred submitted to him, only to be killed by Cnut. Edmund went to London. Aethel died on April 23, 1016, and the citizens and councillors in London chose Edmund as king and probably crowned him. He then mounted a last-ditch effort to revive the defence of England. While the Danes laid siege to London, Edmund headed for Wessex, where the people submitted to him and he gathered an army. He fought inconclusive battles against the Danes and their English supporters at Penswood in Somerset and Ston in Wiltshire. He then raised the siege of London and defeated the Danes near Brentford. They renewed the siege while Edmund went to Wessex to raise further troops, returning to again relieve London, defeat the Danes at Utford, and pursue Cnut into Kent. Edric-Striona now went over to Edmund, but at the decisive Battle of Assandun on October 18, Edric and his men fled and Cnut decisively defeated Edmund. There may have been one further battle in the Forest of Dean, after which the 2 kings negotiated a peace dividing the country between them. Edmund received Wessex while Cnut took Mercia and probably Northumbria. Shortly afterwards, on November 30, 1016, King Edmund died, probably in London. Cnut was now able to seize control as King of England. Edmund was buried at Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset. His burial site is now lost. During the dissolution of the monasteries, any remains of a monument or crypt were destroyed. The location of his body is unknown. Heirs: Edmund had 2 children by Ealdgyth, Edward the Exile and Edmund. According to John of Worcester, Cnut sent them to the King of Sweden where he probably hoped they would be murdered, but the Swedish king instead forwarded them, together with his daughter, on to Kiev. It has more recently been alleged that the 2 sons were sent to Poland and subsequently from there to Hungary. The 2 boys eventually ended up in Hungary where Edmund died but Edward prospered. Edward the Exile returned to England in 1057 only to die within a few days of his arrival. His son Edgar the Atheling was briefly proclaimed king after the Battle of Hastings in 1066, but later submitted to William the Conqueror. Edgar would live a long and eventful life, fighting in rebellion against William the Conqueror from 1067 to 1075. Fighting alongside the Conqueror's son Robert of Normandy in campaigns in Sicily, and accompanying Robert on the First Crusade. He eventually died in England in 1126. Reputation: in the view of M. K. Lawson, the intensity of Edmund's struggle against the Danes in 1016 is only matched by Alfred the Great's in 871, and contrasts with Athel's failure. Edmund's success in raising one army after another suggests that there was little wrong with the organs of government under competent leadership. He was probably a highly determined, skilled and indeed inspiring leader of men. Cnut visited his tomb on the anniversary of his death and laid a cloak decorated with peacocks on it to assist in his salvation, peacocks symbolizing resurrection. In culture, Edmund Ironside is an Elizabethan play about him, which some critics believe to be a very early work by William Shakespeare. Edmund is played by John Horne in the 1970 television movie The Ceremony of Innocence. Edmund is one of the main characters in Justin Hill's novel Shield Wall, first in the Conquest trilogy. See also, House of Wessex family tree, references. Sources: Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Clemose, Peter. The Anglo-Saxons, Studies presented to Bruce Dickens, 1959.